The warship Eternal Blade moved through the darkness of space like a predator hunting in deep water. It was massive and black and shaped like a curved blade. The ship made no sound as it traveled because there was no air in space to carry sound. Inside the ship, 300 warriors waited in silence. They were the most dangerous soldiers in the known galaxy. Commander stood at the front of the main deck and looked out through the viewing window. He could see a small blue planet growing larger as they approached. Earth, the humans called it. He had read the intelligence reports. He had studied the images. He had learned everything the galactic hegemony knew about this young species and their unremarkable world. None of it impressed him. Was tall, nearly 8 feet, with dark green scales covering his entire body. He had 4 arms, each one thick with muscle and ending in clawed fingers. His eyes glowed a soft amber color in the dim light of the ship. A long scar ran down the left side of his face, a gift from a creature on the acid world of Prime. He had killed that creature with his bare hands and worn its teeth as a trophy for many years. Behind him stood his elite unit, the Obsidian Claw. There were 50 of them, and each one had survived training on 500. This was not a number chosen for drama. It was the exact requirement set by the hegemony for soldiers who wished to join the most feared fighting force in existence. 500 planets, each one designed by nature to kill anything that stepped foot on its surface. Only those who survived all 500 were permitted to wear the black armor of the Obsidian Claw. Remembered his own training. He remembered Prime, where the rain fell as pure acid and the air itself burned the lungs. He had spent 6 months there, hiding in caves during the storms and hunting the blind predators that lived in the darkness. He remembered IV, where the gravity was so strong that walking felt like carrying a mountain on your back. His bones had cracked and healed and cracked again until they became dense as stone. He remembered the Belt, a chain of volcanic moons where rivers of molten rock flowed like water and the ground could open beneath you without warning. He remembered Aura, the desert world covered in glass that had been sharpened by endless wind until every surface could cut through armor. He remembered all 500 worlds. Each one had tried to kill him. Each one had failed. The warriors behind him had similar stories. Sergeant N had lost his left eye on a frozen world where the temperature dropped so low that exposed flesh would freeze solid in seconds. He had cut out the frozen eye himself and kept fighting. Warrior had been swallowed whole by a sand creature on a desert planet and had carved his way out from the inside over the course of 3 days. Lieutenant had survived a plague world where the very bacteria in the air rewrote your body from the inside. She had nearly died 7 times during her year there, and each time she had refused to stop breathing. These were not soldiers, they were survivors. They were weapons shaped by suffering and hardened by pain. The galactic hegemony had spent centuries perfecting the process of creating them. They took young with potential and sent them to die on impossible worlds. The weak died quickly, the strong died slowly, and the strongest did not die at all. Those were the ones who became the Obsidian Claw. Now they had been sent to Earth. The hegemony had been watching humanity for several decades. The species was young, barely a few thousand years into their civilization, but they were spreading fast. They had reached beyond their own planet and established colonies on nearby worlds. They were building ships and weapons and showing signs of ambition that made the older races nervous. The hegemony did not like ambitious young species. Such species had a tendency to cause problems. The mission was simple. The Obsidian Claw would land on Earth, observe the humans, assess their military capabilities, and determine whether they posed a genuine threat. If they did, the Claw had authorization to begin neutralization protocols. This was a polite way of saying they would start killing important humans until the species understood its place in the galaxy. Expected the mission to be easy. Earth was classified as a Category 3 habitable world, which meant it could support life without significant technological assistance. This was almost an insult. There was Category 7, barely habitable, a place where survival required constant struggle. Had been raised fighting for every breath, every meal, every moment of rest. The idea that humans had evolved on a world where life was simply given to them made him feel something close to disgust. The ship entered Earth's atmosphere over a large landmass the humans called North America, had chosen a rural area for the landing, a place with few humans and plenty of space to establish a base of operations. The region was called Kansas, and the intelligence reports described it as flat, agricultural, and boring, perfect for their purposes. As the eternal blade descended through the clouds, noticed something strange. The air outside the ship was thick with moisture, and the sensors detected water falling from the sky. Rain, the humans called it, knew what rain was. He had experienced rain on dozens of. On Prime, rain meant death. On other worlds, rain carried toxins or parasites or temperatures extreme enough to kill. He assumed Earth's rain would be similarly dangerous. The ship landed in a field of tall yellow plants, wheat, according to the database, a food crop. Found it amusing that humans grew their food in open fields where anyone could take it. On his, food was hidden and guarded and fought over. The idea of leaving it out in the open seemed foolish. He turned to face his warriors and spoke in a low, commanding voice. They would exit the ship, establish a perimeter, and begin surveillance operations immediately. Any humans who discovered them would be captured for study. If resistance was encountered, it would be eliminated. The mission parameters were clear. The warriors checked their weapons and their armor. They had done this thousands of times before on hundreds of worlds. This was routine. Earth was just another planet, another mission, another species that would learn to fear the obsidian claw. The boarding ramp lowered with a soft hiss, and the night air of Earth flowed into the ship. It smelled strange too, clean and wet and full of organic scents he could not identify. He stepped forward onto the ramp and looked out at the dark field stretching before him. The sky was covered in clouds, and in the distance, he could see small lights that indicated a human settlement. Somewhere in that settlement was a young woman who would change everything he believed about strength and survival, but did not know that yet. He simply walked down the ramp and set foot on Earth for the first time, ready to do what he had always done. Conquer, Kate had been a deputy sheriff in Mills County for 7 years. She knew every road, every farm, every family in the area. She knew which teenagers liked to drink beer in the old barn outside town, and which farmers let their cattle wander onto the highway. She knew the sound of trouble before it arrived. That night, driving her patrol car along Route 12, she heard something she had never heard before. It started as a low hum that made her teeth ache. Then she saw the lights. They came down from the clouds in a straight line, bright white, and then fading to a deep red as they descended. Kate pulled her car to the side of the road and turned off the engine. She watched through her windshield as something massive and dark settled into the wheat field about half a mile away. The lights went out, and then there was only silence. Kate sat in her car for a full minute. Her hands were shaking slightly, but her mind was clear. She had 2 options. She could call it in, report an unknown aircraft landing in a field, and wait for someone else to investigate. That was the smart option. That was what the training manual would tell her to do. Or she could drive over there and see for herself what had just fallen out of the sky. Kate had never been good at waiting for other people to handle things. She started her car but kept the headlights off. The moon was hidden behind clouds, so the only light came from the distant glow of the town behind her. She drove slowly along a dirt path that led toward the field, her eyes adjusting to the darkness. When she got close enough to see the shape of the craft, she stopped the car and got out on foot. The ship was enormous. It sat in the middle of the wheat field like a giant black stone, smooth and seamless, without any visible windows or markings. Heat radiated from its surface, and Kate could smell something metallic in the air, like blood or iron. She approached slowly, one hand resting on her service weapon, though she suspected a pistol would be useless against whatever had built this thing. A section of the ship's hull shifted, and a ramp began to lower toward the ground. Kate stopped walking. She was about 50 feet away, close enough to see but far enough to run if she needed to. Her heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat, but she did not move. Running seemed pointless. If these visitors wanted to hurt her, they probably could, whether she ran or not. Figures emerged from the ship. They were tall, much taller than any human Kate had ever seen. They moved with a strange grace, each step precise and controlled. As they came down the ramp and into the faint light, Kate saw them clearly for the first time. They were not human. Their skin was covered in dark scales that looked almost black in the darkness. They had 4 arms, 2 sets emerging from broad shoulders, and their faces were flat with wide mouths and eyes that glowed amber like the eyes of an animal caught in headlights. They wore armor that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, and they carried weapons that Kate could not identify but knew instinctively were designed to kill. The lead figure stopped at the bottom of the ramp and looked directly at her. Kate felt his gaze like a physical weight pressing against her chest. Every instinct in her body screamed at her to run, to hide, to do anything except stand there in the open like prey waiting to be taken. But she did not run. She had spent her whole life refusing to run from things that scared her. That was why she had become a cop in the first place. The alien raised one clawed hand, and the soldiers behind him stopped moving. For a long moment, nobody spoke. The only sound was the soft rustle of wheat stalks swaying in the night breeze. Then the alien spoke. His voice was deep and rough, but the words came out in clear English through some kind of device attached to his chest. "You do not run," he said. It was not a question. Kate swallowed hard. Her mouth was dry, but she forced herself to answer, "Should I?" The alien tilted his head slightly, studying her. Kate could not read his expression. His face was too different from anything she had seen before, but something in his posture shifted, became less aggressive. He seemed curious rather than hostile. "Every species runs," he said. "On every world we have visited, they see us and they flee. This is the correct response. We are the obsidian claw. We are trained to kill. You should be afraid." Kate took a slow breath. "I am afraid," she said honestly, "but running never helped anyone I know." Behind the alien commander, one of the soldiers made a sound that might have been a laugh or a growl. The commander silenced him with a look, then turned back to Kate. "You are a warrior," he said. "You carry a weapon, you wear a uniform, you protect this territory." Kate nodded. "Something like that. I am a deputy sheriff. I keep the peace around here." The commander seemed to consider this. His amber eyes moved from Kate to the town lights behind her and then back. "How many warriors defend this settlement?" Kate almost laughed. Mills County had a population of about 8,000 people and a sheriff's department of 12 officers, including herself. Compared to whatever army these aliens had, they were nothing. But she kept her face calm. "Enough," she said. The commander made a noise that might have been approval or amusement. "You lie to protect your people. This is also a warrior's trait." He took a step closer, and Kate forced herself not to step back. "I am commander of the hegemony. We have come to observe your species. You will not interfere with our mission." "And if I do?" His eyes narrowed. "Then you will die, but it would be a waste. You have courage. This is rare among soft species." Before Kate could respond, she felt something cold land on her cheek. Then another drop and another. She looked up at the sky and saw that the clouds had thickened. Rain was beginning to fall, soft and warm, the kind of summer rain that farmers prayed for and children danced in. Also looked up at the sky. His expression changed in a way Kate did not understand. He held out one of his 4 hands and let the rain fall into his palm. The drops gathered there, clear and harmless, running over his scales and dripping to the ground. "This water," he said, his voice suddenly quieter, "it falls from the sky." Kate nodded. "Rain happens all the time around here, especially in summer." Stared at the water in his hand like he was looking at something impossible. Behind him, his soldiers had stopped moving entirely. They stood in the rain with their faces turned toward the sky, and Kate realized with growing shock that these terrifying alien warriors, these killers who had threatened her moments ago, were experiencing something they had never experienced before. Something as simple as rain that did not hurt. The rain fell harder and the warriors did not move. They stood in the open field like statues, their weapons lowered, their amber eyes fixed on the sky. Water ran down their scales and pooled in the joints of their armor. None of them seemed to notice. None of them seemed to care. Commander had experienced rain on 37 different worlds during his training. He remembered each one with perfect clarity because remembering meant survival. On Prime, rain fell as concentrated acid that could dissolve flesh in seconds. The only warning was a slight change in the color of the clouds. If you did not reach shelter in time, you died screaming. The rain carried microscopic parasites that burrowed into your skin and laid eggs in your muscles. The only cure was fire. On IV, rain came as heavy metal pellets that fell from such great height and with such force that they could punch through armor. On world after world, rain meant danger. Rain meant pain. Rain meant death. But this rain was different. This rain was warm and soft. It touched his scales and slid away without leaving burns or wounds or poison. It smelled clean, like nothing at all, and it made a gentle sound as it struck the ground around him. Closed his eyes and let it fall on his face, and for a moment he forgot where he was and what he had come to do. Warrior and dropped to his knees in the wet soil. His single remaining eye was wide open, and water ran down his face like tears, though could not cry. He pressed his palms flat against the ground and felt the earth growing soft beneath the rain. On his training worlds, soil was something to be crossed quickly, something that hid dangers and offered no comfort. But this soil welcomed the water. It drank it in. It became alive. Lieutenant A removed her helmet and let the rain touch her bare head for the first time. The sensation was so strange and so wonderful that she made a sound she had not made since childhood, a low hum of pleasure that only made when they felt truly safe. She had not felt safe in decades. She had forgotten what it felt like. Kate watched all of this with growing amazement. These aliens had arrived on Earth looking like death itself, armed and armored and ready for war. Now they stood in a summer rainstorm like lost children discovering water for the first time. She did not understand it, but she recognized it. She had seen that same expression on the faces of soldiers coming home from war, standing in their own backyards and realizing they had forgotten what normal felt like. "You have never felt rain like this," Kate said. It was not a question. Turned to look at her. His amber eyes were softer now, less threatening. "We have felt rain on many worlds, but it always carried death. It always demanded something from us." He held up his hand again and watched the droplets gather in his palm. "This rain asks for nothing. It simply falls. It simply gives." Kate nodded slowly. "That is what rain does here. It falls and then things grow. Crops, flowers, trees. The land needs rain to live." "The land needs rain," repeated, as if the words were from a language he did not speak. The storm intensified. Thunder rolled across the sky, deep and powerful, and lightning flickered in the clouds. The warriors looked up with expressions that Kate might have called fear if she had not known what they had survived. But it was not fear. It was wonder. They watched the lightning like it was a show put on just for them, and when the thunder growled again, several of them made sounds of approval, as if applauding a worthy opponent. "The sky speaks," Warrior said, "but it does not attack, it only speaks." Kate could not help but smile. That is thunder. It is just noise. Lightning can be dangerous if it hits you, but mostly it just lights up the sky. People around here usually sit on their porches and watch storms pass through. Some folks find it relaxing. Turned to his soldiers and saw what Kate saw. 50 of the deadliest warriors in the galaxy, standing in the rain like hatchlings experiencing their first day outside the nest. Their weapons hung forgotten at their sides. Their military discipline had dissolved. They were experiencing something that their training had never prepared them for. Peace. The concept was foreign to culture. Their entire civilization was built on the idea that the universe was hostile, that survival required constant struggle, that strength came only from suffering. They trained their warriors on because they believed easy worlds produced weak soldiers. They had conquered dozens of species and controlled hundreds of star systems because they believed that only the strong deserved to exist. But standing here in this gentle rain began to wonder if his people had been wrong. The humans had not been forged in suffering. Their world did not try to kill them at every moment. And yet here was this female, this Kate, standing before him without weapons or armor, showing more courage than half the soldiers in the hegemony's fleet. She had not run. She had not begged. She had simply stood her ground and spoken to him as an equal. The rain began to slow. The thunder moved away to the east, still rumbling but growing quieter. The clouds parted slightly, and for a moment moonlight broke through and illuminated the wet wheat field in silver and gold. The water droplets on the stalks of grain sparkled like tiny jewels. And stood up from the ground. His armor was covered in mud and he looked at it with something like affection. "Commander," he said, his voice rough with emotion he did not know how to express. "I have walked on 500 worlds. I have killed creatures that would make most species lose their minds with fear. I have bled and burned and frozen and starved. But I have never felt anything like this. I have never stood in a place that did not want me dead." A nodded in agreement. This world is soft, but the softness is not weakness. It is something else. It is something we do not have a word for. Looked at Kate. "Do your people have a word for it?" Kate thought for a moment. "Kindness, maybe, or mercy. The world is not trying to hurt you because there is no reason for it to hurt you. Life here is not a war. It is just life." Let those words sink into his mind. Life that was not a war. The idea was so strange, so completely opposite to everything he had been taught, that he did not know how to process it. But he knew one thing for certain. He could not destroy this world. He could not bring the hegemony's wrath down on these people who had built a civilization in a place where the sky gave water instead of death. Whatever his orders said, whatever his duty demanded, he could not do it. The rain stopped completely now, leaving the air cool and clean and smelling of wet earth. Kate looked at the alien commander and saw something changing behind his glowing eyes. She did not know what it was, but she knew it mattered. "Would you like to see more?" she asked. Kate led Commander and two of his warriors down a dirt road toward her family farmhouse. She had no idea if this was the right thing to do. She was bringing alien soldiers into her home, introducing them to her brother, showing them the place where she had grown up. Every rule in the book told her this was insane, but every instinct in her gut told her it was necessary. The farmhouse sat at the end of a long driveway, a two-story white building with a wraparound porch and a red barn behind it. Kate had lived here her entire life. Her parents had built this place with their own hands before she was born, and when they died, she and her brother Danny had kept it going. It was nothing special by human standards, just a small farm in a small county in the middle of nowhere. But it was home. Danny was waiting on the porch when they arrived. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with the same brown hair and steady eyes as his sister. He had served 2 tours in Afghanistan before coming home to help run the farm, and he carried himself with the quiet confidence of a man who had seen real combat. When he saw the warriors walking up the driveway, he reached for the shotgun leaning against the porch railing. Kate raised her hand. "It is okay, Danny. They are not here to fight." Danny looked at the aliens, then at his sister, then back at the aliens. His hand stayed near the shotgun. "Kate, what the hell is going on?" "I will explain everything, but right now I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" Danny was silent for a long moment. He studied with the eyes of a soldier assessing a potential enemy, met his gaze without flinching. Something passed between them, a recognition that only warriors understood. Danny nodded slowly and moved his hand away from the weapon. "Fine," he said, "but if they try anything, I am not responsible for what happens." Kate led the group around the side of the house to the back garden. It was not large, maybe a quarter acre, but their mother had spent 30 years making it beautiful. Rows of tomatoes and beans and squash grew in neat lines. Sunflowers stood tall along the fence, their yellow heads turned toward the east where the sun would rise. A small patch of strawberries spread near the water pump, and climbing roses covered a wooden trellis that their father had built the summer before he died. Warrior stopped at the edge of the garden and stared. He had never seen anything like it. On Worlds, food was produced in factories from mineral compounds and recycled organic matter. The idea of growing food from the ground, of putting seeds in soil and waiting for them to become something edible, was completely foreign to him. He crouched beside a tomato plant and touched one of the ripe red fruits with extreme care. His clawed fingers were gentle, almost afraid. "This is food?" he asked. Danny crossed his arms. "That is a tomato. You pick it off the plant and eat it. Pretty simple." Looked up at him. "You grow this yourself. You make it happen." "The soil makes it happen," Danny said. "We just help. Put seeds in the ground, give them water and sunlight, keep the weeds away. The plants do the rest." Walked slowly between the rows of vegetables. He bent down and touched the dark soil with his clawed hand. It was soft and rich and full of life. He could smell the organic compounds in it, the bacteria and fungi and tiny creatures that made the soil fertile. On his, soil was dead rock mixed with toxic dust. Nothing grew there naturally. Nothing could. "How long does this take?" asked, "from seed to food?" Kate answered, "Depends on the plant. Tomatoes take about 2 months. Squash takes a little longer. Some things, like fruit trees, take years before they produce anything." "Years," repeated. "You plant something and wait for years before you can use it." "That is how it works," Kate said. "Patience is part of farming. You cannot rush it. The plants grow at their own speed and you have to accept that." Lieutenant had stopped near the roses. She was looking at the flowers with an expression that Kate could not read. Her amber eyes moved from petal to petal, taking in the colors and shapes with intense focus. "These are not food," I said. "What is their purpose?" Kate smiled. "They are flowers. Their purpose is to be beautiful." I turned to look at her. "Beautiful, that is all." "That is enough. My mother planted those roses 20 years ago because she thought they were pretty. She liked to look at them in the morning when she drank her coffee. After she died, Danny and I kept taking care of them because they remind us of her." I was silent for a long time. On her training worlds, everything had a purpose related to survival. You did not waste resources on anything that did not help you stay alive. The idea of growing something simply because it was beautiful, simply because it brought joy to look at, was something she had never considered. Joined her by the roses. He reached out and touched one of the petals with surprising gentleness. It was soft and delicate, nothing like anything on the he had known. One careless movement would destroy it completely. And yet the humans had not only allowed it to exist, they had nurtured it and cared for it and mourned when the person who planted it was gone. "Your people are strange," said to Kate. "You spend time and effort on things that serve no practical purpose. You grow food in open fields instead of protecting it. You let water fall from your sky and do not fear it. You build homes that could be destroyed by any serious attack and fill them with objects that have no value except memory." Kate looked at him steadily. "Is that weakness to you?" Shook his head slowly. "I thought it would be. When we received orders to come here, I expected to find a soft species living on a soft world. I expected weakness, but I do not think that is what I have found." "What have you found?" Kate asked. Looked around the garden at the vegetables and flowers and his own soldiers standing among them like children in a place of wonder. He thought about the rain that had fallen without trying to kill them. He thought about the thunder that had spoken without attacking. He thought about this small house and the 2 humans who lived in it and the 30 years of roses planted by a dead mother. "I do not know yet," he said, "but I think I have found something my people lost a very long time ago, something we forgot existed." Danny stepped forward. "You know, I have some cold beer in the kitchen. If you want to keep talking, we might as well do it sitting down. Looked at his warriors. They looked back at him. Something passed between them, a silent agreement. They had come here as conquerors. They had been trained to destroy. But tonight, standing in a garden full of tomatoes and roses and impossible gentleness, they wanted to understand. "We accept," said. And for the first time in his long career of war, he sat down with his enemies and shared a meal. 3 days passed like a dream that none of them wanted to wake from. The warriors stayed near the farm, camping in the wheat field beside their ship. During the day, they explored the countryside with Kate as their guide. They walked through forests where nothing tried to kill them. They watched birds fly overhead without scanning for attacks. They felt the sun on their scales and realized it was not trying to burn them. Warrior spent hours in the garden, learning how to identify ripe vegetables and pull weeds without damaging the plants. Danny taught him how to pick tomatoes and showed him how to eat one fresh off the vine. The expression on his face when he tasted it was something Kate knew she would never forget. He had eaten nutrition paste his entire life. He had never known that food could taste like anything at all. Lieutenant became fascinated with the roses. She learned the names of each variety and asked questions about how to care for them. Kate showed her how to prune dead leaves and check for insects. When I asked if she could take a cutting to grow on her own ship, Kate said yes without hesitation. Sergeant and found the barn full of old equipment and tools. He spent hours examining tractors and plows and harvesting machines, trying to understand how humans shaped their land to grow food. Danny explained the basics of farming, how they planted in spring and harvested in fall, how they rotated crops to keep the soil healthy, how they depended on rain and sun and luck, and listened with the intensity of a student learning the secrets of the universe. And Commander talked with Kate. They walked the dirt roads together in the early morning and sat on her porch in the evening. She told him about human history, about wars and peace, about art and music, and the simple joy of watching a sunset. He told her about their endless training and their brutal culture, and the 500 that shaped every warrior in the hegemony. "We believed suffering made us strong," said on the third night. They were sitting on the porch, watching stars appear in the clear sky. "We believed that easy lives produced weak soldiers, so we sent our children to die on impossible worlds, and we celebrated the ones who survived." Kate was quiet for a moment. "Did it make you strong?" "It made us hard," said. "It made us able to endure anything, but I am beginning to think that is not the same thing." He looked at her with those amber eyes that no longer seemed threatening. "Your people did not train on. Your planet gives you water and food and warmth, and yet you stand before me without fear. You welcomed us into your home. You shared your food and your knowledge and your time. That takes a different kind of strength, a kind I do not think my people possess anymore." Kate smiled slightly. "Humans are not always kind. We have our own history of wars and cruelty. We are not perfect." "No species is perfect," said. "But your imperfection is different from ours. You still know how to grow flowers just because they are beautiful. You still know how to stand in the rain and feel peace instead of fear. We have forgotten these things. Perhaps we never knew them at all." On the morning of the fourth day, gathered his warriors and told them it was time to leave. They had a report to file with the hegemony. They had orders to follow. The mission was not complete, but it had changed direction in ways none of them had expected. Kate walked with to the ramp of his ship. The wheat field was golden in the morning light, and somewhere in the distance, a rooster was crowing. It was the most ordinary scene imaginable, and it was the most extraordinary thing had ever witnessed. "What will you tell them?" Kate asked. "Your leaders, what will your report say?" Was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke carefully, choosing each word like it mattered more than anything he had ever said before. "I will tell them that we trained on 500 to become the strongest warriors in the galaxy. We believed that strength came only from surviving pain, that power came only from enduring suffering, but we were wrong." He looked at Kate, and there was something new in his eyes, something that might have been hope. "On Earth, we stood in rain that did not burn. We touched soil that gave life freely. We met a species that did not flee from us, that showed us kindness we did not deserve. And we learned that true strength is not only found in surviving darkness, it is also found in those who create light. Kate felt her eyes sting with tears she refused to let fall. Will they listen? I do not know, admitted. The hegemony has believed in strength through suffering for 10,000 years. They will not change easily. The ship departed that night, rising silently into the stars while Kate watched from her porch. Danny stood beside her with 2 cups of coffee, and they said nothing because there was nothing to say. Somewhere up there, warriors who had been trained to kill were carrying seeds of change back to a civilization that desperately needed them. 3 weeks later, Kate was in the garden pulling weeds when Danny ran out of the house shouting. She looked up and saw the sky filled with ships. Not one ship, but hundreds. The hegemony invasion fleet had arrived. Kate stood up slowly, dirt on her hands and fear in her heart. This was it. They had come to destroy them after all. Everything had said, everything they had shared had meant nothing. But then she saw something that made her breath catch in her throat. Between the invasion fleet and Earth, a single black ship hung motionless, the Eternal Blade, and behind it 49 more ships just like it. The entire obsidian claw positioned as a shield between the fleet and her world. A message crackled through every radio on Earth, broadcast on all frequencies. His voice, calm and strong and absolutely certain. This is Commander of the Obsidian Claw. Earth is under our protection. Any ship that advances will be destroyed. This world has shown us something we had forgotten. We will not let you take it from them or from us. Stand down or face us. The invasion fleet hesitated. For a long moment, nothing moved. Then, slowly, the hegemony ships began to turn away. They knew what the Obsidian Claw was capable of. They knew what those 50 warriors had survived. And they knew that dying on this mission was not worth the cost. Kate stood in her garden with tears running down her face, watching the stars where impossible things were happening. She thought about rain that did not hurt and roses planted for beauty and beer, shared with strangers who became something more. Above her, the Obsidian Claw held their position until the last hegemony ship vanished into the darkness. Then they too departed, returning to their duties among the stars, carrying with them the memory of a small blue world where the sky gave water instead of death. But they would be back. Kate knew this somehow, the same way she knew that sunflowers turned toward the sun and rain made things grow. They would be back, and when they came, she would be waiting on her porch with cold beer and stories about a mother who planted roses. Because some things were worth protecting, and some warriors, once they learned that truth, never forgot it.